All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. We have a couple people trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our October installment of our Renaissance Roundtable series. This series is kind of a spin-off to our monthly evening seminar series that I know some of you have come to. I think more casual conversations, digestible kind of snippets of projects and organizations, while some of us might be eating lunch or taking a break from a busy work day. It's so wonderful to see a bunch of familiar faces and names on the screen, but also some new names and faces who might be new to Sullivan Renaissance. So for those of you who are new here, welcome, and some background for you. Sullivan Renaissance was founded in 2000 by Sandra Gary to fulfill her mission of making Sullivan County a beautiful, vibrant, healthy place to live. When it started as small grants for community groups to plant gardens and flowers, and this has grown to 3 really robust grant programs with a variety of grants to fund different projects, from $500 to $350,000, plus an awesome volunteer and intern program, horticulture and technical assistance, and so much more. I would like to acknowledge, I think our entire Sullivan Renaissance team is on the Zoom. So thank you for being here. And between the 7 of us, if you want to wave, between the 7, I think there's 7 on the screen, between us, if you have any questions or need assistance with projects, we're always happy to help. And in addition to the work that I just mentioned, community engagement, discourse, and education are at the heart of everything we do at Sullivan Renaissance. And that's why we've curated this program today to continue our Renaissance Roundtable series. Our first 3 roundtables are available on our YouTube channel, and those topics covered included historic preservation, litter, and creating walkable and bikeable communities. But today we are turning to accessibility and public places. So Sullivan County is home to a diverse community of people of all ages, all abilities, and parks are really one of the most important places that people interact both with each other and with their community and with their environment. So public spaces in towns can only be strengthened when we provide inclusive, accessible, safe, welcoming, and interactive places in parks. So today we bring together a panel of experts, both local and international, to discuss their experiences with and advice with creating such places. So who are these panelists? If you could please join me in welcoming Amanda O'Rourke. She is the Executive Director of 880 Cities, which is a nonprofit based in Toronto. Mary Williams, the Executive Director of Beautiful People Adaptive Sports in Orange County, New York. And Anne Marie Connolly, who's the Assistant Chief of Clinical Services at the Center for Discovery right here in Sullivan County. So each of these people bring a different perspective, approach, or experience. And we'll kind of start at a global level with Amanda and kind of narrow down to some really specific, wonderful projects with Anne Marie and Mary. During the presentations, they'll be brief. They're about 7 to 10 minutes each. And during the presentations, if you have questions, comments, feel free to drop them in the chat box and we'll have a conversation when they're done. So first, I would like to welcome Amanda O'Rourke. Like I said before, she's the Executive Director of 880 Cities, which is a nonprofit with a mission to create healthy, equitable, and sustainable cities. She has over 17 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, leading strategic planning, partnership development, and managing high-impact teams. She's led diverse, equitable mobility and public space projects in cities in North America, Europe, Australia, and beyond. She works collaboratively with city governments and community partners to make it easier for people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds to walk, bike, take transit, and build social connection and a sense of belonging in public spaces. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda. And just let me know, I'll click through your presentation and take it away.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Shannon, and hi, everyone. It's just a pleasure to be here during your lunch hour. Nice to chat about parks, one of my favorite topics. So as Shannon mentioned, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called 880 Cities, and our mission is to ignite action and challenge the status quo to create healthier, more equitable and sustainable cities for all people. And I want to focus in on that igniting action piece. That is really at the core of what we've been doing over the last 17 years, is to really try to shake things up in cities, because we know that the way that we've been designing our cities and planning our cities and managing our cities and parks and public spaces have not been equitable, have not served everyone equally, and we're really trying to change the channel on that. You can go to the next slide. So we have a big lofty mission, and even in my bio, I was like, oh man, I try to do a lot of things, don't I? So we have this big lofty mission, and we work internationally, but if I had to summarize it in one sentence, really the way that we try to advance that mission, that lofty mission around healthy, more equitable and sustainable cities, is by bringing people together to transform mobility in public space, because we believe mobility, our streets, our parks, our public spaces, all the spaces that belong to all of us, have an important role to play in achieving that mission. And that's really where our expertise lies, is bringing people together, and that's also intentional, bringing folks together to actually design and create better places for people. You can go to the next slide. So as I said, we've been at this for quite a long time. The organization was founded 17 years ago, and since then we've been in over 350 cities on 5 continents. And we've been challenging cities, challenging that status quo by asking a very simple, but we think powerful question. And that is, you can go to the next slide. What if everything we did in our cities was great for an 8-year-old and an 8-year-old? We believe if you start there, start with that question, you can create better cities for everyone. So one of my gifts today, I can't be there in person, I can't bring food or anything good to drink, but one of the gifts that I want to give you today is your very own set of 880 goggles. So when you are looking at a street, an intersection, a park, think about this 880 lens and think, how can we create those spaces where an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old feel safe and comfortable? If we're doing a good job, we're at a good starting point. If we're not, we have to do much better. And the 880 lens is really, again, a starting point to a broader conversation on creating equitable public space. Everyone is aging. We're all aging. Aging is living. Aging is to be celebrated. We all can connect with the universal sort of human experience of aging. And we can think of an 8-year-old, our niece, our nephew, our son, or daughter, a friend. We can think of an 80-year-old. We can have them in our mind's eye and think about, how do we create better park, streets, and public spaces that really work for them? Now, we also know that age is just one dimension of how we experience inequity in cities. So while it's a universal human experience, we also acknowledge and understand the many dimensions and intersections of social location on how we navigate public space. Our race, our gender, our ethnocultural background, our gender expression, our ability. So 880 is always that starting point, but really taking that intersectional lens on how our social location also influences our experience in public space. You can go to the next slide. So again, the 880 lens, those goggles, put those goggles on when you look at that intersection to the park, when you look at the design of seating, when you look at the programs and activities. Would you send your 8-year-old and 80-year-old to go walk to school, to get pick up a prescription, to go and play in the park? again, if you start there, you open up a broader conversation on how to create better cities for everyone. You can go to the next slide. And so 880 Cities was founded by a gentleman named Gil Peñalosa. Gil was a former commissioner of parks and recreation in Bogota in Colombia in the late 1990s. And the reason I talk a little bit about Gil, when he later immigrated to Canada and started 880 Cities, he led a really impressive, at that time, transformation of Bogota's parks and public spaces. And when he came to Canada, he used this idea that public space, the investments in bus rapid transit systems, more inclusive and welcoming parks and libraries and community centers, separated all ages, abilities, bicycle paths, and of course, what is known as the Ciclovia, which is a world-renowned program which opens the streets to people and closes them to cars every Sunday. On Bogota's streets. It's over 120 kilometers, which is, I think, about 75, are open to people and closed to cars for early morning and afternoon. And Gil's idea there was that at the time, Bogota had like 1/9 the per capita income of a city like New York. He was inspired by New York's park system, the Central Park, as a space that everyone could connect and feel a sense of belonging, where people of all ages and income levels could connect. But he said, I can never build Central Park in Bogota. I don't have enough money. What if we use the streets? What if we transformed our streets temporarily into a giant pop-up park every Sunday? And to this day, every Sunday, about 1.3 million people come out and enjoy the streets as a public space, as that giant pop-up park. And that has since inspired cities around the world to do similar types of programs. So baked into the DNA of our organization is this very central idea that public space transformation can be a significant driver for improving social equity and quality of life for everyone. And I know I'm talking to a lot of parks people, and you all are totally on this boat with me. You can go to the next slide. Great, thank you.
Sorry, minor technical difficulty.
No problem, it's all good. Our three sort of, with 880 Cities, our three kind of underlying principles is really about reclaiming the right to the city for everyone. We absolutely believe we've been building our cities thinking a lot more about moving cars than we have on the health and happiness of people. And we take a more human-centered approach to planning our cities. These are the key things that we really focus on. It's about reclaiming the right to mobility in our cities, the right to safely and comfortably move within our city by walking and biking and using public transit. The right to public space. Everyone should have an accessible and welcoming park, public space within a 10-minute walk of where they live, and they should feel safe and comfortable in that space. And then the right to participate, that everyone should have the right to participate in the decisions that affect them in their cities. And these are the three kind of areas that we really focus on achieving our mission of healthy, equitable, and sustainable cities. You can go to the next slide. This is my last one, I believe. So I know that's kind of broadly about 880 Cities and our principles. And really, as I mentioned, parks are a central focus on how we actually apply our work. We have this broad perspective, but we work in a hyper-local context, and we take place-based approaches. And the big thing that I wanted to share with you all under the topic of creating accessible, welcoming, and inclusive parks and public spaces is that, over the 17 years of our experience in working in communities and context, it's really about, and I think Shannon, you mentioned this at the beginning around engagement, it is really absolutely about co-creating with community. Placemaking is a collaborative process. It is not a project. It is a process of actually building capacity within community. And when local communities have the power, the capacity, and the resources to actively shape their public realm and public spaces in a way that meets their needs, that is when we see those huge benefits of improving everyday quality of life and creating those more equitable and accessible public spaces that we all are trying to achieve. So I really wanted to drive home the focus on co-creation with community as one of the most important things that we focus on when it comes to creating those accessible and welcoming parks and public spaces. One of my colleagues, Jay Pitter, who's a wonderful placemaker here in Toronto, calls placemaking and creating parks and public spaces for everyone a radical act of collaboration. So I want to do a nod to Jay because I think that is absolutely the best way to describe doing great parks and public spaces. It's a radical act of collaboration. Our cities are not really designed to facilitate collaboration. And so it's organizations and people and leaders like us that need to sort of create those conditions for radical collaboration. In closing, I just want to say we have created some really simple tools and resources in collaboration with our wonderful partners at AARP. There is a guide called Creating Parks and Public Spaces for All Ages, which highlights some really great case studies. But the pictures that you see here are just great examples of how when you bring community in, parks and public spaces can be so much more than fun and games. They are that absolutely a broader culture of civic engagement and stewardship in our parks and public spaces. So you see here reclaiming streets for kids in the top left corner on their walk, engaging young people and reimagining their park as a place for play. This was in the downtown, where a local counselor said, "Oh, we don't have kids in the downtown. You don't have to think about play in the park." And we said, "No, sorry, we're going to bring kids in." And there actually are lots of kids in the downtown. They're just not in public space because there's nothing for them to do. It's about reallocating space so that children, older adults, people can move freely within their space. On the bottom left corner, that was an activation we did during the pandemic, focusing on a partnership with seniors care facilities. How do we bring some of the programming that was happening indoors and safely do it outdoors during the pandemic? And when you build those wonderful relationships and collaborations with community, you see that community can do amazing things and be so resilient. The picture in the middle is in Buffalo, New York, where through our project in building some capacity at the local leader level, during the pandemic, they were able to pivot. We did a winter placemaking project there. And during the pandemic, they were able to pivot and build on those relationships to deliver important things that the community needed at that time, which was access to fresh food. And the bottom right corner there is a great example of cultural representation in our parks and public spaces planning. This is in Toronto, in a high density, one of the densest neighborhoods in our city with a high proportion of South Asian immigrants. This wonderful woman here is the head of an organization that has brought Muslim women together to organize different programs in the parks. One of the things that she was really successful in doing was bringing a park cafe. You can see it in the background, where they could serve food actually created by some of the entrepreneurs in the community. And she also brought in a tandoor oven, which was an important sort of space in the community where people could bake bread together. So public space is about so much more than design. Design is important, and design for all ages is absolutely important. But really, my message is connect with the people, build those relationships with people because they really know the most important needs in their parks and public spaces at a community level. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to the question part.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate that as kind of an overall introduction into why creating these spaces is so important and activating them is so important. And the next two speakers are two people who I think have really taken those ideas and those principles and put them into practice. So I'm really excited to hear their projects as well. So next, I want to have Mary Williams chat about Beautiful People Adaptive Sports and their Field of Dreams project. So Mary Williams has worked in the nonprofit sector for over a decade, beginning as a volunteer coordinator and children's advocate at the Westside Catholic Center in Cleveland, Ohio. After fulfilling this role, Mary joined Youth Challenge, an organization that offers sports and recreation for children with disabilities. And after completing a master's degree in divinity at Boston University, Mary moved to the Hudson Valley in 2018 and has served as the executive director of Beautiful People. And Beautiful People provides adaptive sports programs to over 300 athletes with disabilities throughout Orange County. So Mary also serves on the board of directors for Leadership Orange and is passionate about creating a world that is inclusive, accessible, and equitable for all. I also, one of my favorite titles that Mary has is also one of my friends. So in addition to being the executive director. So Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about Beautiful People in the Field of Dreams.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for inviting me as your friend and also as somebody who knows a little bit about this. Amanda, thank you for presenting such an inclusive global perspective on space and how to co-create space. I think that terminology that you used is really important when you think about accessibility and accessible public spaces. So just a little bit more about Beautiful People before I jump into our space. Beautiful People is a nonprofit in Orange County that was founded in 2006. So we've been around for a while now. We partner with a lot of different facilities throughout Orange County to offer our programs. In 2018, we were able to open our very own baseball field, which you can see in that picture right there. We have the only adaptive baseball field in Orange County, which we're really proud of. We were only able to put this space together with the support of local donors. It was actually all private donations, and then we also received a large amount of money from the Subaru Share the Love campaign, and then also from the Yankees Baseball Tomorrow Fund. So it was really all local support mostly that really made this field happen. We used the Miracle League, which is a Florida-based organization that does adaptive baseball throughout the country. So they were really the advisors behind this project, but the architects and everybody who built this space were all local. So this was really an Orange County project. We now serve over 300 athletes per year. We did have to, stop programs for a few months during COVID, but we've really been going strong since the fall of 2020, and we've really adapted a lot of how we do things. This field that we have is in Warwick, New York. And during the past few years, when we were unable to get into some of the public spaces that we used to use pre-COVID, we turned our baseball fields into a lot of different spaces. So we turned it into a soccer field, we turned it into a kickball field. And the beauty of that was seeing how we could attract athletes with more diverse abilities than we were able to bring into some other spaces that were maybe less accessible. So it's been a really interesting few years as we've sort of watched our programs evolve. So this field, what is special about this baseball field is that it's made out of a rubberized surface. So folks with wheelchairs or walkers can access this field in the exact same way as folks who are able to walk onto the field. We also have larger openings and larger dugouts that create more space for assistive devices and also for service animals. We have a lot of athletes who bring service animals with them to programs. And so it's just been a really interesting evolution over the past few years. Although we had this space before COVID, we were even able to adapt it into something much more expansive and thinking about how we can offer different programs in this space. We have also started expanding into different parts of Orange County than we had ever been serving in. So primarily we had been working out of the Warwick-Goshen area, but what we were realizing is that a lot of athletes in diverse parts of Orange County were not able to get to those spaces. So rather than trying to draw everyone to one location, we are going out into the community and making ourselves more accessible as an organization. So not just creating accessible spaces, but making ourselves accessible too. So this past year, we just started our first soccer program in New Windsor. So we are now in the Newburgh, New Windsor area. We had our very first soccer program there that had over 50 athletes participate in that. We also had a new baseball program in Middletown. We are hoping to move into Port Jervis next year. So we are making a very concerted effort in trying to put ourselves into more diverse socioeconomic locations so that athletes of all backgrounds can access our programs. And something that Amanda was saying that I feel is really crucial to beautiful people as well is that although our focus is adaptive sports, that is not the end goal for beautiful people. The end goal is not to like build the greatest athlete there ever was. The goal is to bring people of diverse backgrounds together. So the model at Beautiful People is we have a 1-to-1 buddy ratio. So we bring in volunteers who are able-bodied and they pair up one-on-one with athletes who need assistance. And volunteers can start at the age of 12, which we feel is really important because that helps to destigmatize disabilities at an early age. I mean, watching these buddies come in and they are so timid the first week, they're like, do I talk to my athlete? Do I hold their hand? Do I, can I give them a hug if they want a hug? And then watching them buddy with an athlete for an hour and just seeing how these kids transform and build friendships throughout all the different kinds of abilities that we have is really amazing. And our programs oftentimes end up being just as transformative for the volunteers as they are for the athletes. I've written a lot of college reference letters for volunteers over the years, and one of the volunteers who stood out, he has volunteered with his family as a baseball coach for like probably 10 years. He wrote his college recommendation letter or his college essay about how he wants to become a neurosurgeon and work with folks who have had traumatic brain injuries because of his volunteer time at Beautiful People and seeing what traumatic brain injuries can do to folks. And he is now at Cornell and he is studying to become a neurosurgeon. So, something that is as small and as local as something like Beautiful People and our Field of Dreams can really have transformative impacts on diverse populations throughout the region. So that is Beautiful People. I am happy to answer any questions, but thank you, Shannon, for inviting me today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary. And I think one of the best points that stood out to me that you made was about being accessible as an organization and not just creating accessible places. I think that's such an important point because there's, in our Zoom room right now, we have, municipalities, we have nonprofits, we have our partners at Sullivan Renaissance. And so getting out to the community and being accessible as an organizational kind of ethos is so important. So I appreciate that point. And all right, now I'm going to turn it over to Anne Marie Connolly, who is the Assistant Chief of Clinical Services at the Center for Discovery. where she's worked for 21 years. Her focus is on curriculum development and training, as well as oversight of the center's innovation labs, a technological hub where seasoned experts collaborate with various teams to design and build innovative solutions that enhance the quality of life for individuals with complex conditions. Anne-Marie spearheaded a variety of innovative center projects, including Discovery Dreams Play Park, which I'm going to let her tell you about. Anne-Marie also has completed training in playground safety and supervision. And as an occupational therapist, she has a keen understanding of how inclusive spaces and provide crucial learning opportunities, support skill development, promote positive self-esteem, and strengthen family relationships through intergenerational play. And that parks and playgrounds are perfect environments to facilitate fun, interactive play, foster friendships, promote physical health and well-being, and nurture the mind, body, and spirit. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne-Marie with that to tell us about the Center for Discovery and the Discovery Dreams Play Park.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm so excited to be here, and this is great. I love hearing about the 880 lens. That's something that is just so exciting to hear about that concept. And beautiful people. I've heard about the program before, but to actually get more in-depth information is wonderful. So just want to first talk a little bit about what the Center for Discovery is. It is the largest employer in Sullivan County, and we are a nonprofit provider of comprehensive healthcare services for 1,200 children and adults with complex conditions such as medical frailties and autism spectrum disorders. And we provide innovative educational, residential, medical, nutritional, and creative arts experiences to enrich the lives of individuals through personal accomplishment. And for the Discovery Dreams Play Park, that's been a vision of a team of ours for a long while now. And so just in the past few years, it actually came to fruition. So if we can move to the next slide, Shannon. So years ago, we wanted to design a play park, not a playground, a play park that really spoke to that intergenerational connection. So we purposely called it a play park, and something that would support not just the child's physical, social, emotional, but also their communicative, sensory, and cognitive needs of any child who's 5 years or up, regardless of their medical diagnosis. So something that can really help them with supporting whatever skills they're working on in the classroom, and really bring them outdoors in a more fun, motivating environment, really finding ways to promote that positive self-esteem and engage in fun, interactive play that is really just natural. And we also wanted to promote, of course, physical health and well-being, but one of the key components that we were hoping to do is, as a residential facility, when families come on weekends, and their parents and their siblings, we wanted an environment where they can visit with their child and have this awesome experience of playing and engaging and connecting. So we really wanted to strengthen that intergenerational bond with all the family members and visit. Next slide, please. And so what we did is we worked with experts in playground design and inclusive play, and they collaborated with our occupational therapists and physical therapists to design a playground that really hit all the points that we wanted to target. And so we created 4 distinct play zones that we named Swing Street, Zip Zone, Hippo Highway, and Adventure Island. So if you go to the next slide. So this was our vision and our sketch of what we wanted to do. We wanted to have unique play zones that gave a range of multi-sensory experiences that accommodated each student's unique needs. And we wanted it to not just be accessible, but be fully inclusive. So children who are able to ambulate, but also children who use wheelchairs and walkers. So we have, you see, for the 4 distinct zones, the green areas are where we have, similar to what I think Mary was sharing on her ballpark, rubber poured in place surfacing, and the tan areas are the engineered wood fiber. So we have a combination, and we did that originally. We wanted to have everything be the poured in place rubber, but in doing the research on the costs of equipment and servicing, it was an exorbitant amount of money. So we've worked to make it so it really could fit within our budget, but still not lose any of the components of the inclusivity. And so you'll see if we go to the next slide, this is what it actually looks like. And we're almost done. We have a little bit of construction to still do as far as in the front entrance, but you'll see if you look carefully, the gray is the poured in place rubber surfacing. And each zone has, like I said, unique features that really helps promote that engagement. And as we go through the different play pieces of equipment, you'll see really thoughtful consideration to find play pieces that really foster social interaction and engagement. So to operate whatever piece of equipment, it involves somebody else helping and coordinating and collaborating. So we'll go through each slide. So in the first area, this is our biggest hit area, Swing Street. It's super popular and everyone loves that movement input. And so we designed a space with 5 different types of swings. If we go to the next slide, we can look at each one. On the upper left, you see something called the friendship swing. And I love this because 2 students or a child and their parent or a staff with the student can sit and work in that swing and play together. And then we have the oodle swing in the middle, which multiple students can sit on in a variety of different ways, and you get that interaction and sensory input as well. Same with the tire swing. We also have bucket swings that have the plastic support harness, and we also have some that don't have that as well. So we really have all different types of equipment to meet everybody's different needs. So that is our swing section. And then if we go to the next slide. We actually have such a high demand for swings, we're actually going to be adding in more because they're so popular.
Sorry, I'm just having a minor technical difficulty. It's trying to connect me to YouTube. So there we go.
Okay. So this is a big hit as well. So one of the things that we found that was so exciting as a newer product was zip lines. And zip lines are great if the person is able to stand and hold on and move, but we have many students who can't. And so we created, we have 2 different types of zip lines. So if you go to the next slide. So here we have something called the zip cruise, where in the back, you can see the girl kind of landing on the platform. She sits on the zip line and scoots across, but we also have something called the zip cruise assist. So the individual is in a bucket swing, and then the staff assists them with having that experience. And what I love about this experience that this one provides, we have individuals who aren't able to transfer. So we have some people who use mechanical lifts. And I have done a lot of research trying to find outdoor play environments where they use those Hoyer mechanical lifts. And we had one child who was quite medically involved and needed full supports. So we were able to work with our innovation team to find a way to provide him the support he needed, in addition to the harness and supports, and use the mechanical lifts to have him be able to zip line and play against his friends. So it really is a fun kind of environment to have that experience. And he never, ever had that opportunity in his whole childhood. And I think he was like 17 years old. So that is the zip cruise. And then we also have, instead of just a regular seesaw, we have something called the we-saw, which I just love that concept. So multiple students can sit and play and have that opportunity to have that interaction with their friends. Next slide. And I love this. They had this new product and it's like a merry-go-round. And so it's easily wheelchair accessible. So students go in and they can, in the middle, you see them holding on to the handle. They can help turn it by themselves, or another fellow student or staff can help from the outside turning the we-go-round. This is a sway fun glider. So it's a wheelchair accessible. It's got a ramp that goes right up to it. So students of all levels can be able to have that gliding motion back and forth. Next slide. We also want to find other pieces of equipment. They have lots of good sensory input because there's so many individuals who are sensory seeking. So we have these things called roller tables. So it's just a table with all these little rollers. So they can either pull on their backs or pull on their arms with their friends by themselves and have that opportunity for that input as well. Next slide. If you ever, when you were growing up, played the game Simon, this is a great, fun, interactive game. So there are these sensors that light up and make music. And on the pulse table tennis, you can play against another person or play against teams. So the sensor will light up and make a musical sound. And if it's on your side, you have to hit it as soon as possible. And then the other team has to hit it. And so if you miss, in the middle, you see that, that circular thing, that's where you keep score. So you can play these games and it's outdoor and it's always on. So you can just easily come up and play. And the pulse tempo is the same thing. It lights up and makes music. And as soon as that happens, you hit the switch. So you have this opportunity for this, not just visual attention, engagement, all the goals that they're working on for the IEP, but it's just a natural fun environment. So they're way more motivated to participate. And what's great about these environments, it's helped really foster and build communication skills. So we're really naturally, they're more motivated. So they're communicating, whether it's using their devices, sign language, or just verbalizing more when they're in this motivating environment. Next slide. Okay, so we also wanted a really strong musical sensory area in the inclusive park. And so we created something called Hippo Highway. So we have musical instruments, we have some fitness equipment, and some sensory features as well. So if you go to the next slide, this is not a great picture, but we have this huge hippo that when you press a little button on his ear, mist comes out his nose. So it's not a lot of water, so they're not going to get soaked, but it's enough. And it's been such a big hit with not just the students and their families, but also with staff. Next slide. And we also have a whole variety of different type of musical instruments, so they can have that engagement for that sound and play. And they even do, we have a whole department of music therapists who can do small groups out there as well. So that's a great environment. So you can be standing playing with the equipment, or you can be seated in a wheelchair. It's fully accessible. And then we wanted to also have a fitness component. So not just for the students and adults who go to the center, but also for the staff to have a wellness opportunity. So we have a bunch of different equipment. It's called Health Beat fitness equipment, ellipticals, balance, squat, press, all different things. So they can get that fitness and strengthening components as well. And then the last, which is pièce de résistance, is Adventure Island. And this is where we have, this is more of a higher level type of zone where they do a lot of climbing and slides, and it really is more complex kind of motor tasks. So if we go through some of these things here, the next slide, one of the key features we have is something called a sensory tunnel. So you can walk through the sensory tunnel, and when the sun is shining through those stars, it projects an image inside the tunnel. And it also has these marbles that are very amazing for tactile sensory input. And so these quiet enclosed spaces can be very calming and organizing for many of our students. And then the next slide, for the higher level individuals, we have a large focus on balance, coordination, and we've really found that these type of opportunities can be really organizing, and then going to the classroom, they're more focused and attentive. We've also found after regular opportunities on the playground, many of the students are sleeping better at night as well too. So this is called the tightrope bridge. And the next one is a belt zone climber. So that black belt is very, very wobbly. So you have to really be able to coordinate and hold on and balance. And we also have this pod stomper bridge. So as soon as you step on one of the pods, the whole bridge moves. So you can go by yourself, but you can also go with your friends and be able to learn that cause and effect. Oh, okay, now I have to write my body a certain way. And it's just natural, fun play. And then just like that roller table I showed in a couple of slides before, this is a roller slide. It gives a lot of good sensory tactile input. And those are just some, that's not everything that we have, but it just gives you an idea. We really tried to be strategic on really finding a way to give them outdoor learning opportunities, but in a fun, interactive, socially motivating environment.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I really appreciate that. It's what an incredible space. And I think it's important to know too that you know, the Center for Discovery serves this population. So having this incredibly massive play area for your people is wonderful. And I think every town municipal park could include elements of this. It doesn't necessarily have to be all completely just like this, but you can kind of integrate those elements throughout to make sure that everyone can take something away from it. So I'm really impressed with what you guys have been doing there. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
And I'm going to bring it back to the panel for questions. We have some time for questions. In the chat, we have some questions, but also a lot of kudos to all three of you. I think a lot of people are really excited to hear about these projects and you know, would love to see them in their own communities. We do have, let's see, Anne Marie, question for you. Is this park open to the public? It would be wonderful for older residents too. Is that?
Unfortunately, it's a private school and it's a private playground.
Okay.
But I'd be more than willing to work with whoever to help, because it did take a lot of time and research to find, you know, the right design and the right expert to help guide us, as well as quite a bit of fundraising, because not only is the surfacing quite expensive, but so is the equipment.
Yes, I'm sure. Thank you. I do want to
I
ask.
just...
Oh yeah, absolutely, Mary.
Oh, so I just wanted to add, there is a park that has some elements of what Anne Marie was talking about in Warwick. It's called Stanley Deming Park. And it's really cool. It was built entirely by the community, but it's a fully adaptive park. So if you are looking for a place, it is public space.
Oh, that's great to know. Thank you, Mary. Anne Louise, you have your hand raised.
I do. Thank you. For I guess Amanda, but any of the panelists could answer. You spoke specifically about engaging youth. Within your organization, do you have specific programs, or do you have a youth council or a board, or in what ways do you find most beneficial in trying to get the youth to lend their input to engage in the community and give that type of input?
Great question, and Louise. Yes, we make it a point that any project that we're doing, we always engage with young people throughout the process. We build a lot of partnerships with the schools, the local schools. So that's usually the easiest way to connect with kids and hear what they have to say. And you know, a lot of we have the sort of rules of engagement. Is one of the rules is to go where people are. So don't make people come to you, go to where people already are, kind of a tenet of broader outreach and community development. But we pop up at schools or work very closely with teachers to build it into like a class curriculum that day. We'll do a workshop about, you know, what you would like to see in the space. And then invite them to actually, in some cases, volunteer to create some of the interventions in the space. So that's one of the biggest tools that we have, is working very closely with schools and school boards and teachers to be able to connect with young people. The other thing is we do run also a fellowship. This is not so much youth, but young city leaders. We run several fellowships for young city like emerging change makers, where we provide, this is for ages 19 to 35, so it's not exactly youth, but younger leaders in the community to implement their own projects. So we have funders that provide, we run the program, but it's $5,000 to implement their project idea. And then we provide ongoing coaching and training and capacity building. And many of the programs that those young people implement are often have a youth component. So there's a great sort of amplification effect there. Those are two ways.
That's good. Can I follow up with one more? And within your time with the organization, was there anything that surprised you about what youth asked for or engaged in, or that you discovered about them?
Yeah, always some wonderful surprises. I think one of the things consistently is that when we engage with young people, they are so much more creative. It takes less time to get them to thinking pretty boldly, which is really lovely. So and to think around what they'd like to do in the space. I think a lot of times when we do outreach to community, there's a real focus on people get intimidated by thinking about what kind of materials or what kind of designs. And a lot of like the traditional consultation approaches are like these very complicated diagrams, which we don't do at all. We do like, really simple activities that people of all ages can engage in. So it's like simple boards, people can vote with a sticky dot. And this is for everyone, not just children, but when we engage with newcomers, when we engage with seniors, we try to keep it really consistent. But I think with children is that they it takes them less time to get into the really creative mode, and they come up with lots of really great ideas and very simple ones. I think there's this this will be the last thing I say because I tend to be long-winded, sorry. The sort of dominant narrative often with engaging with children is that people think that, oh, they're going to ask for ridiculous things like roller coasters or things like that. That has not been our experience at all. A lot of times when we're engaging with young people, they're asking for things like a water fountain and a place where they can play and sit down and chat with their friends, or like nature. They really focus on like the animals and the nature component. So I think also there's this sort of stigma around, oh, if you engage with children, they come up with these ridiculous ideas and it's just tokenism. Absolutely not. Our focus is on actually engaging children in creating those spaces, because we think it's a really central part of building leadership skills and capacity within the community as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I also, similar question to Mary about youth engagement. You mentioned that you have the buddy volunteers can start at age 12. How do you kind of build up that volunteer core of young people and engage with them?
Yeah, so similar to what Amanda was saying, we try to put ourselves in different spaces to draw those folks out. Sometimes it can be hard to work with local schools because a lot of the schools can't like publicize different organizations and programs. So a lot of what we have found is that our programs spread by word of mouth and social media. Social media has been super helpful lately. The past few years, we've really built up our social media presence and just trying to get as much online as possible and trying to streamline the process of onboarding volunteers. We have one group of volunteers that comes from Storm King School every week. There's like 25 or 30 of them who come out every single week to our Warwick programs. And that's just, what has spread through word of mouth. As we have started to put new programs in places like Newburgh and New Windsor, it's really been a matter of like connecting with some of the parents of athletes who might know other folks in the community. We had Senator Scoofus come out to one of our soccer programs a few weeks ago, and he has helped spread the word and get more information out, and is helping to push us to places like Port Jervis. So a lot of it is word of mouth and just kind of getting our mission and vision out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Can I just add one thing that I thought of as well quickly is, in addition to working with the schools, and Mary made me think of this too, we also piggyback on a lot of events where we know that kids and families are going to be there. So we'll pop up at like, a fireworks festival, or, there's a pumpkin patch, and we go where people already are gathering and create playful experiences in the engagement itself, so that we can actually engage more people, not just children, but also their parents of young children are also, they're not going to meeting, they don't have the time or capacity or resources. So it's really, again, taking it to the streets, that idea of like going to where people already are and finding out areas in your community where people already gather, or in some cases creating spaces, creating opportunities where people will gather. Like we've hosted community barbecues or movie nights, just to actually invite people into the conversation and hear what they have to say.
Great, thank you. And Mary, also thank you for putting some of those examples of local accessible parks as well. Hope, did you have a question? You can unmute yourself if you want.
Thank you for this opportunity. Are there public restrooms available when you create these spaces? Because I'm just thinking that people, if you're doing 8 to 80, that is a wide range, but also a range of needs. And if they're staying there for, a little bit of, I'm saying like an hour or two, which it easily seems like you could, how is that for any of the people on the panel? How is that taken into consideration? And thank you for this opportunity.
Very pro public washrooms, absolutely. Huge advocates for public washrooms and public spaces. It is absolutely one of the highest needs that we hear when we engage with community. I'm not going to spend time in that space unless there's a washroom available. And that's across the spectrum of 880. I have 3 kids. When they're little, like I'm not spending time in a park unless I know there's a washroom there. So when we actually do activations, we do often sometimes have to, because there's such a dire lack of public washrooms in a lot of North American cities, which is where we do a lot of our work. We often have to bring in porta potties and porta toilets for the activation events, but we do our best to try to do engagements close to where public facilities are already there. So yeah, it's a mix of both, but it's a huge issue that we're advocating for, and accessible washrooms year round. We're a winter city here. Winter cities should have washrooms all seasons of the year.
So Beautiful People is also a private space like the Center for Discovery. So we haven't necessarily had to take that into consideration, but just to piggyback off of what Amanda was saying about public restrooms, I'm gonna like put another hat on that I wear sometimes, which is promoting inclusion around gender and sexual orientation, and just putting a little shtick out there to try to make restrooms gender neutral when you can. I've been involved with a lot of DEAI work in Orange County the past few years with Leadership Orange and the Orange County Chamber of Commerce. But yeah, just a little reminder to try to make restrooms accessible and inclusive of gender, as well as abilities when you can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. I think it's always good to remind that there are so many different dimensions too. And I think Amanda had mentioned this, there's so many different dimensions to accessibility and community that, creating these inclusive spaces, we have to take into account all of those dimensions and, communities. So I appreciate that reminder. Nick, did you have a question or no? Did I see you raise your hand at one point or no?
I did not, but
Okay.
I just in what Mary, do you find that the municipalities help out? Are they contributing to the public spaces? Was that Mary or no, I'm sorry, Amanda, with public spaces? Do you find that you're getting a contribution from municipalities?
Yeah, our role is often bringing together community and government. We kind of are like that mediator, like in the middle. And a lot of our work is directly with municipalities. So and our sort of, I think, expertise and experience is in how do we build more of those collaborative infrastructure to actually make those places that cities invest in. So they often have like the millions of dollars sometimes, to invest in the infrastructure, but how do they spend the thousands or hundreds of dollars to make the space actually come alive and work? And that's where they need community and people and understand the community needs to actually activate them and make them vibrant. And so make sure that that investment, that municipal investment, actually works to the best benefit. So yeah, it's really about sort of bringing those groups together around a broader vision of what the space can be beyond, and that design and programming work hand in hand.
Thank you.
Shannon, you're muted. I think you said
I
something.
know. 3 years of Zoom and I still do that sometimes.
We all do.
Okay. So I think that takes care of the questions in the chat as well as some of the questions just live. I really want to thank Mary, Anne Marie, and Amanda for your time today. I think you guys have been awesome resources. You are awesome resources. And I hope that those listening in today and us at Sullivan Renaissance and in Sullivan County and beyond, can use you as resources and mentors in the future for projects to make sure that we're, being as inclusive and accessible as possible in our work. So I really appreciate your time. I do also want to just have everyone mark your calendars. Our monthly seminar on Wednesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. will be hosted by us, and we're going to focus on winter placemaking. I know Amanda mentioned the Winter Cities Toolkit, so that was something that we drew from on this, but being in the Catskills and, we get crazy winters, and I know some people tend to withdraw from community activities in the colder months. So really, creating spaces and places that are accessible and active in the winter. So that will be the topic of our seminar on November 2nd. And then I do also just have our contact information. I will be posting this recording from today up on our YouTube channel. And I really encourage, the purpose of these roundtables is to have conversations. And I don't want these conversations to stop when we all log off Zoom. I want to keep having these conversations about accessibility and inclusivity and making sure that we all are incorporating it into our work as municipal leaders, as school leaders, as community activists and citizens. So I really appreciate all of your insight and the questions and your time today. So I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon and joins us on the November seminar, and have a great day. We'll see you soon.